What's your sugar mama story? I've been working at a restaurant for over a year and a half now, and the same elderly couple comes in at least 3 times per week. They're both probably in their 70s at least. The woman is always in nice fur coats and has different jewelry all the time, but is kind of losing herself to her age. I don't think she has dementia quite yet, but she's not quite all there anymore. The man is constantly leading her around, walking her to their regular booth, helping her order, etc. Found out recently the poor old guy lives in his car. Basically this woman pays for him to have a few meals with her each week in exchange for his companionship. It's kind of like a weird elderly escort deal they've got going on. It's sad, but in a weird way kind of sweet, as I've noticed he gets very protective over her and seems to genuinely care for her. He keeps all of her receipts for her, makes sure she gets exactly what she wants, and always makes sure she gets her 1.5 scoops of vanilla ice cream for dessert. How the guy survives living mostly in his car in Minnesota winters is probably solely due to help from this woman. TLDR, elderly couple eats together all the time. Lady is rich AF and basically pays for his companionship and company. Met a 30-year-old widow on Xbox when I was 19. She said she played Xbox to pass the day because she was financially set for life when her husband passed and wanted to make some Xbox friends. We start playing more and more until I couldn't keep up because my controller and headset broke. She asked for my address and after a week, I got a brand new controller and headset. I couldn't thank her enough and asked what I could do in return, to which she replied to just keep playing with her. Over the next few years, she occasionally buys me new games when they came out and even a few collector's editions if I wanted them. Eventually, we drifted apart because I couldn't find time play with my school and work schedule. I still miss her and occasionally try and find her online again, but can't remember her gamer tag or Facebook. She will always be one of my best gaming buddies I've ever had. This story hit me hard. I know how it feels to have an old gaming buddy drop off the face of the earth. Hoping you find her again someday. Yeah, this is really sweet. I'm stuck on the idea that in the future instead of Dear John letters to long lost friends it'll be Dear Cheese Turd 69XX. If you can log into her Xbox Live account and if you had her as a friend you should be able to. In my early 20s I met an older woman around mid-40s in a bar. She was drinking alone and I stood by her to order a drink. She leaned over and gave me all kinds of compliments about my body. I said thanks and that she looked great too. She gave me her business card, realtor, and told me to text her around 2 AM. I did. She rolled up to my place in a super nice Benz. Woke up and she was gone. Next weekend she texted me an address and to be there at 8 PM and to clear my entire weekend for her. I did. She had a really nice 8-bedroom house. She was wild, taught me a thing or two and let me explore all kinds of shit I didn't even know I was interested in. The next weekend, same thing. I showed up and she had so much stuff for me. Really nice high-end clothes and shoes. She also bought all kinds of kinky toys for me to use on her too. She made me into a half-assed dom and I would tie her up and do just about anything I wanted to. We had a good time. Then she fell off the face of the earth. I don't regret it one bit. She was really nice and spoiled the shit out of me. She made me food and would bring it to me while I was in bed. Massaged my body damn near every day. She would sleep in a different room and between the sexual times we would have long lengthy conversations about anything and everything. When she stopped contacting you, weren't you a little tempted to go round her house and see what's up? No, but I did want some kind of explanation, but at the same time I understood, so I didn't push. I suspect if you did a real property search on the address you would find that A, the house sold right around the time she broke things off, and B, her name was nowhere on the title as either the buyer or the seller. When I was 19 I dated a 35-year-old lady. She was not super rich herself but her dad was, and she was very much a daddy's girl. Anyway, her dad was a realtor who made a ton of money by war profiteering. Essentially, rich people sell huge houses at a massive loss in unstable countries when they think conflict is getting too local. Her father would buy the home cheap, And if it survived the war he would turn around and sell them with huge margins after the conflict settled. That was his business. Anyway, he kept up with his rich clients and sold them vacation mansions in the States later on. Rich folk have such money to waste. He then paid his daughter, my girlfriend, $800 a month to check in on the client's mansions once a month or so to make sure the mansion hadn't burned down or something. Keep in mind his clients lived in Dubai, London and never came to their vacation home in the States a single time in 20 plus years, despite spending all of the money to get them furnished and everything. So me and my girlfriend would go to the mansion and just sleep in the mansion for a while sometimes. I've known other well-off people, but to this day I have not set foot in another home as huge as that fucking mansion. Their master bathroom had a separate room where the entire ceiling would shower water. 50 people could all shower at the same time in there. I got to shower in there by myself on several occasions. The shower ceiling sounds like something out of a dream. I think I know what I want in life now. I stayed in a love hotel in Taipei that had something like that. Although that one could only fit maybe 10 people comfortably. It also had a steam room function. The living room also had a jacuzzi that could fit like 4 people, and it was right next to a TV that had free porn. Pretty amazing room for around $150 a night. When I was 19 I dated a 35-year-old lady. She was not super rich herself, but her dad was, and she was very much a daddy's girl. HMM. Wouldn't that mean you pretty much have a sugar daddy by proxy? I don't have a specific story, but this was my father apparently when he was young. My grandmother told me how he would always go out with women twice his age. It was such a regular thing, I guess, that after dates she'd just go, "So how old is she this time?" Many years later, and after my mother's passing. Ironically, she was only 3 years older than him. He's still doing it. He's in his 50s and his lower limit is the 70s. And he ain't messin' with no broke to broke either. I wish there were more guys like your dad. My mom is 74 but looks 50ish, and she'll sign up for dating sites, but guys her age don't want to date anyone older than 50, and they have not aged well at all. Believe me, I have spent time making decisions with her on her accounts. She just wants a nice, age-appropriate guy to travel with. And other things, but we do not speak of those. She doesn't want anything serious, though probably doesn't want to be a sugar mama, although she is fully capable of that. But all dudes her age seem to want to date someone their junior, by a lot. Even though she could pay for yearly trips to Europe for the couple. She would love the companionship of a guy like your dad. Ex constantly bought me food and would give me money if I wanted beer or weed, but would then leave the beer and weed knowing I would drink or smoke it all. She only ever came to my apartment for sex and would then leave when I couldn't get it up again. Her mom would drop off 3-4 bags of groceries every week. She bought me my second car ever and paid for my college classes and helped me get my life on track really. It ended pretty quick when I told her I thought I was in love with her. Ah, the good old Ted Mosby. I was seeing her for about 2 months. She was 10 years my senior. We worked together and there was always those certain lucks throughout the year. She was going through a divorce, with well-to-do architect, and were previously bonded over depressive situations we were going through. It wasn't until I handed my resignation in and told the staff I was moving states did it kick off. She said we should go get a drink one night. Nothing happened. Then she invited me round to her place. 3 awesome kids. Anything I wanted booze-wise. Food. Great cook. Meals and drinks out too. Very in shape, and we absolutely bonded very well in the bedroom too. It was almost perfect. Except for me having sneak out at the crack of dawn before the kids woke up. This continued for about 7 weeks. I had my car packed and ready to go, and we spent one last night together before I moved. We said our goodbyes and I drove off. Last I've heard from her, as per the arrangement, her request. It could have worked out, I felt. Miss Ya, NX. Man, I'm sorry, that must suck. Edit. Wow, I know that's a small amount of karma for a top comment, but having my top comment having to do with me empathizing with someone makes me feel happy, especially because I've been working on that for a while now. Thanks guys. Went out drinking with my cousin on a Thursday night and we ended up meeting a MILF at the bar he'd hooked up with before. It's closing time and he invites me over to her place to keep the party going. I was supposed to stay at his place, so I didn't really have anywhere else to go. At the end of the night, she made me a bed in her guest room. I woke up the next morning with a terrible hangover and people are rushing around and I'm like, WTF is all this noise? I emerge from the bedroom and sitting at the kitchen table as my cousin, the MILF, and her 2 high school aged kids. Mind you, I'm 22 at the time and my cousin is 23. MILF packed us lunches while she made her kids lunches and sent us off with brown paper bags and Gatorades. The kids were less shocked than I was. I think they were used to it. Edit. She was divorced and lived in a massive house. Damn, you got a Gatorade and not just a bottle of water. She must be fucking loaded. Lol, I was thinking the same thing. She must get it in bulk at Sam's. Nice. This is so funny, but I also feel so bad for those poor kids. They can no longer keep up the delusion that parents are asexual. What's the chance the kids don't know that he slept in the guest bedroom? There's the real horror. After he and his cousin walked out, her kids high-fived her and said, "Good shit, you get it, mom." I could be wrong, but other than slightly scarring her kids by hooking up with people a couple years older than them, she sounds like a decent mom. This happened to me a couple years ago. I was back home from college on a break and matched with this girl on Tinder. She seemed pretty cool and we texted for about 3 days, then decided to meet up and get some sushi. She came over to my house first and parked in front of my house, my mom's house, for like 15 minutes and texted me she was too shy to come in. Eventually she walked up. We got sushi, then went back to my place. One thing led to another and pretty soon we were doing the horizontal hokey pokey in my bedroom. She stayed the night and we hung out and got breakfast the next morning. She said she had to go to the mall to return some stuff and asked if I wanted to tag along. I said sure, why not. We go to the mall and she's returning some clothes or something, so I'm just looking around the store. I find this sick ass Patagonia jacket and I was checking it out. When she was done she saw me checking it out and asked if I wanted it. I said hell yeah, but it's like $250 and she said she'd buy it for me. I just laughed. She took it off the rack and went to the counter. I thought she was just really committed to the bit until she pulls out a manila folder fucking full of $100 bills. My jaw dropped and I probably made a weird sound. She just looked at me and winked. We left the mall and I had my dope ass jacket all bagged up. I asked her about the money and she just said don't worry about it. We had been talking for a couple days and I knew a lot about her at this point and knew she worked a close to minimum wage job. I just let it go. She drives me back to my house and before I get out of the car she says hold on and pulls out the folder. I ask what she's doing and she just throws $600 into my bag. I felt weird and tried to give it back. She said don't worry about it, I have a bunch. She opened up her purse and pulled out like 6 or 7 of these manila folders. Eventually she convinced me to keep the money and I was just like fuck it, I'm a hooker now I guess. I go back to my school and she goes back to hers. Over the next few months she would randomly drop anywhere from $100, $500 in my Venmo every week or so. We continued texting and she just kept buying me shit. If I mentioned being hungry she'd order a pizza or something for me and my roommates. If I mentioned I wanted anything I could expect to see it in an Amazon box on my porch a couple days later. Shit was tight. I go back home again on my next break and decide we should meet up again. This time we skipped the sushi and went straight to doing the ole bippity boppity boo. Again. Things go great. She says the night and we watch a movie the next morning. She eventually decides it's time to leave and puts $10 100 bills on my coffee table. At this point I know she won't take no for an answer, so I just take the loot and say thanks. She drives off and waves bye to me. Everything seemed normal. A few hours pass and I go to text her but it doesn't go through. Weird, but whatever. More time passes but my text still won't go through. I tried to message her on Snapchat and it looks like she deleted me or blocked me or something. Turns out she blocked me on every form of social media. I was pretty confused. I just played it cool and tried not be a weirdo and like call her a bunch or anything. Break-ins and I go back to school again. Still haven't heard a word from this chick. Then at like 2 AM one night I get a call from a block number. Shocker, it's her. I asked her what was going on and she just shushed me. She was whispering but not like sexy whispering. She sounded super serious and a little scared even. She just told me that I can't tell anyone about our interaction together, her name, or anything. She even asked me to delete pictures she sent me of herself. I ask what the hell is going on and she just tells me she has to go. I hung up the phone and never heard from her again. Still got the Patagonia though. TL. Dr. Med girl on Tinder. She bought me a bunch of stuff and gave me a buttload of cash. She told me never to tell anyone about what she did and ghosted me forever. Edit. I'm bad at words. Do you try to look her up once in a while? Any idea what was up? Any clues? I worked at a telemarketing agency for a little while that allowed us to enter personal numbers if they were in the same area code. I called her once just to see if he answered. She didn't. I realized I had absolutely no game plan. I just gave my pitch and tried to disguise my voice and she hung up pretty quickly. So I know she's not in jail or dead or anything. Other than that I can't find anything about her. I think about it at least 2 times a day. This is such a wild story lol. Why manila envelopes? Were the C notes counterfeit or something? Maybe she really is rich somehow and thought cutting you off like that was easier in case you got addicted to the perks? Who knows? Maybe someone out there will see this thread and be like, oh man, that shit happened to me too. Glad to hear she's still alive, at least. There's no way it's legal money if it's separated into envelopes and shit tons of it. I'd guess she was being paid to move something, but what the hell do I know? Sick story though. Yeah, she was supposed to be taking those envelopes to different banks and depositing them into different accounts. I'm assuming each one had 5-7K in them. It's a pretty common tactic used by modern drug rings or cartels to get their cash deposited into banks. She was probably allowed to use some of the money for personal shit or stuff related to moving the money from bank to bank. Gas, food, etc. It's a sweet gig but high risk. Sounds 100% like the money wasn't legal somehow. Maybe she's trying to protect you. Yeah. Honestly it hurts hearing most of these stories in this thread and seeing how they end. Seems like most of them end in breakup and bittersweet. I was at a dive bar and this lady comes in, wearing yoga pants, and a tank sports bra. It was a Tuesday night. She was beautiful. Looked like a hot suburban mom, early, mid-40s. Had no idea what she was doing there. We got to chatting and it turns out she was in the middle of a divorce and had been moving out of their house all day. We exchange numbers and I go to her house later that night. Door opens, and it's on without introduction. Through the night and later the next day, she keeps making comments about how she can't believe she's with such a younger guy. I look young for my age, so I assume that she misunderstands and I say, you keep saying that. I don't think I'm as young as you think, and she asked how old I was. I told her 33 and she said that's what she thought. She was 55. I was totally shocked but also thought it was pretty cool. Over the next year, we had an ongoing relationship. She never cared or got jealous about who I was dating or seeing. We would even talk about sex with other people while we made love. Which was pretty hot, because neither of us were possessive and it was about mutual enjoyment. She was very adventurous sexually and I felt I could open up about anything and be truly open with her, without judgment. We would go out to restaurants and she would always pay. She paid for us to take one small trip for a week together out of town, which was awesome. She always talked about how she had an older man set her up in business when she was young, and how she'd like to do the same for me. And we would talk about plans for what that would look like. She even suggested I move into her spare bedroom and be roommates, saying she wouldn't be jealous if I brought a girl home. I thought that was a bit too complicated and would work only in theory, so I respectfully declined. I moved off and she found someone her own age and we talked less and less all the time. but I keep her updated on my life. I think of her fondly and often, and tell her I love her. I consider her a very special woman to me, and she still inspires me. Finally, a post such ended in mutual enjoyment without one taking advantage of another. A while back I posted in a couple subreddits here for meetups, and a woman actually messaged me. We connected pretty well, and found out her job took her around the US. She also was in a poly relationship, and just liked having guy friends everywhere, so I just became another one of her boyfriends. When we started talking it was about 2-3 weeks away from my birthday and I had told her it was coming up soon. She wanted to get me something for it, but I had felt uncomfortable telling her my address. Finally she convinced me, and about a week later, she sent me an incredible care package. It was 2 brand new games, a new hoodie, some comics, and a Funko Pop. It was a lot to spend on me even though we hadn't known each other that well. This happened in Tokyo around 5 or 6 years ago. Met a client at work when I was 26 or 27. She was 32 or 33. She was really cute, very smart and educated, and we got on very well together. She was a bit of a train geek. She liked riding trains. Fairly common in Japan but rare for a woman. She had a lot of cute quirks like that. She could tell you the make and model of every pantograph on every train in operation in Japan. Anyone who knows Japanese politics has heard her name before. I didn't know who she was when we first met, but my boss later on told me to treat her like a VIP at all times. Anyway, our work project wrapped up and we decided to go out for a bite at a nearby restaurant. She tells me she needs help preparing for an interview at a very famous company for a very unique role that they would essentially be creating just for her. I tell her I'd be happy to help her with it. I didn't have any ulterior motives. I genuinely liked her and wanted her to succeed. We met up again to do the interview prep, and one more final practice after that. She invited me to play darts with her after we'd finished since she apparently enjoyed darts and I'd never played before. We went out to a darts bar in the early evening, and somehow we ended up playing a game where the loser of the game had to drink tequila shots. She mopped the floor with me but we both started doing shots until well past the last trains home. Eventually we wound up going to an internet cafe to spend the rest of the night, but things progressed pretty quickly. She got touchy-feely and we decided to get out of there and go to a hotel together. And so began our relationship. She turned out to be richer than God. She would buy all kinds of stuff for me, would never let me pay for dates even though I was making very good money for my age, wanted to take me on all kinds of trips around Asia. She bought me some very nice watches and clothes which I still have and cherish to this day. She had a Benz and an Aston Martin and some other cars just lying around in her parking spaces, in the middle of Tokyo. Probably would have married her if it weren't for some complications with her marital status. I found out about that after a few weeks of dating. It was a bit of a tragedy really. It turned out she was in a terrible, loveless marriage and had a young child. I found out about that way after we'd already been going out a while. At first it made me uncomfortable to be in that situation, but I started to understand that she was trapped in it and due to societal pressure she had no real way of divorcing. Neither of them wanted to continue their marriage and both of them were seeing other people, but due to their very high profile in the Japanese media a divorce was out of the question. We ended up breaking up when we realized having a kid together would cause irreversible damage to her political career and that a divorce to marry a white guy would be the end for her professionally. That really sucked but it was the truth. She was the best girlfriend I've ever had. If I'd met her 3 years earlier I'm sure my life would have been completely different now. Not for the money, could not care less about that. I've never met someone I connected with so well. Really the one that got away. Seriously, on the keeping touch thing. I reconnected with someone I was absolutely in love with like 10-15 years ago. Nothing ever happened between us. We had a few almost sex situations. About 3.5 months ago, he looked me up. He's separated from his wife and in the process of going through a divorce, but, my god. I can't tell you how it feels to finally reconnect with the one that got away. It makes you feel like you did everything right in your life to be exactly where you are. It makes you never regret any decision you ever made in your life because everything, both the good and the bad, led you here. Sometimes I still cry in disbelief. Parking spaces in the middle of Tokyo, the real sign of real wealth right there. Okay, so who here knows about Japanese politics? I need to know who this is, lol. Mayo, I'm legit about to spend my day in work reading about Japanese politics. My time has come. I met an older MILF when I was 27. She was 43, and I think it was really more of a boy toy situation, though we were still friends. She would basically take me all around the state on her trips as a sales rep when I had the days off from my own job, and we'd stay at hotels and just fuck half the night. Then we'd wake up, fuck again, and be on our way. It lasted for just over a year, and honestly, I was just so spoiled by her in terms of sex. She loved to fuck out in nature, and before it ended, we had fucked in 3 national parks. We even had a thing where we'd impersonate the Count with 2 national parks. RRR. And then laugh like idiots. We even had a thing where we'd impersonate the Count with 2 national parks. RRR. And then laugh like idiots. I love this. 6 or so years ago I was just out of college in Southern California, living with my grandpa, and asked out a Chinese grad student after meeting her at work. On our second date, she picked me up in a shiny black Audi. Said her parents leased it for her. We went to a Chinese restaurant. I had paid for food on our first date and just assumed I would keep on doing so, despite making $15 an hour at the time, because I'm a red-blooded, Korean, American man. So when she started ordering lobster, duck, and enough food to feed 8, I started getting a bit nervous. The check came and I reached for it, but she snatched it away. Got out her wallet and pulled out 3 Benjamins like it was nothing. And when she did that, I couldn't help but catch a glimpse of the stack of crisp bills, all which seemed to have a similar pattern, W. Benjamin Franklin's bald head peeking out the top. She had to have had at least 2 GS in there. I don't like going to the bank, so I just get it all at once, she said. I had way less in my name than she had in her wallet, Mayo. Anyway, she paid for the $200 plus meal and let me have the leftovers. Had my meals set for the next week. From then on we alternated paying for dates. My meals would be $O $$ on Yelp, hers $$ plus. She eventually would pay for Disneyland tickets, Laker games, and some fantastic meals before 5 months later she graduated, her student visa expired, and she went back to China. She was really down to earth too. Once we went to a spot near downtown and she street parked in Skid Row. I advised against it, motioning to the homeless encampments, but she said it was no big deal. Chill. Her English was good enough to hold conversation, but once we were lying in bed and it was kind of a lull, and she said out of the blue, I'm funnier in Chinese, which I thought was hilarious, but also sad. Maybe because of that, we didn't text much outside of planning our weekends. I sometimes wondered whether she had 2 or 3 boyfriends she was just cycling through, lol. She didn't have Facebook, only Weibo, or some other Chinese social media. I texted her a few years ago, but the normally blue bubbles were now green. Still, we had a lot of fun and she helped get me through those post-grad broke ass blues. Hope she's doing alright. I'm funnier in Chinese, living in a primarily non-English speaking country. I can relate. I am definitely funnier in English. Yeah, it is very interesting to experience that. My German-speaking personality is significantly different than my English-speaking one. Agreed. I've moved to Germany for school, from the US, and though I'd like to think my German has gotten pretty good, I'm definitely funnier and more expressive in English. Guess that's just the incentive to keep working on my German. I struggle to talk about complex things like politics and ideas and whatnot, but it's coming along. I am annoyed that I could have been raised in a bilingual home but wasn't. Would have made this easier. What level were you when you started school in Germany? Doesn't the green bubble just mean she has a phone that isn't an iPhone? I'm not sure what context you are putting that in. He's saying she wasn't worth knowing anymore since she was no longer an iPhone user. Plot twist, the restaurants belonged to her parents and she was laundering money. So this happened when I was 18. I met a woman at a club. She was a 43-year-old MILF but very in shape. She owned a couple of local restaurants. Would always make me come over and cook dinner. Sometimes even give me the keys to her older BMW to get around in. She took me to Vegas a couple times. Sex was good. It was nice for a while but she was very controlling. I had to be at her place within a certain time after I got off work, which was basically the commute time plus 5 minutes. I certainly wasn't allowed to date anyone else. I got tired of it and quit. Haha, quit instead of broke up. BC, I guess it is like a job at that point. Job, that's the idea behind a sugar mama daddy, sex in exchange for goods and services. Although it's been pleasing, although it's been fun, and though I am grateful for all that you've done, the practice and pride and professional joy, I think that it's time that I end my employment. The wages are great, but the benefits blow, and life's about more than a payoff, you know. I hope that you get it. I hope you can see, it's simply the business. It's not you, it's me. I need to be somewhere that helps me to grow, and not just develop in places below. I need opportunity. This isn't it. And that's why I'm ending my contract. I quit. But they are the ones who are supposed to provide you the goods and services. Your only job is the fucking. I got a free personal training session at Equinox Gym. This woman working out there must have been working the same routine I was doing because during the session, we ran into each other non-stop at the same benches machines, joking about it a ton, eventually then chatting her up the end of the session. Super pretty and fit 41-year-old, incredibly intelligent, with her own private practice doing sex therapy. We seemed to click. I'm 26. After my session, the trainer salespeople allowed me to stay and keep working out on my own. Then this therapist lady makes her way back to me prob since the trainer was gone and we continue talking and exchange numbers to get together sometime. I figure what the hell, may as well try for this one. No more than 5 replies into our first text conversation she straight up tells me I'm cute and she's always busy, so she's looking for a casual hookup relationship with me. I tell her oh how convenient, I'm in the same boat. Luckily she lives pretty close by too. So I've been going to hers about once a week for the last 2 months or so just to have sex and hang out. Oh, and she's also really into the zodiac and tarot cards. And she likes to analyze me and eventually wants to read my cards. IDK whatever, small price to pay, and TBH it actually is pretty interesting and sorta sexy when she talks about it. Now this wasn't a sugar mama type relationship at first, but we started going out to dinner just for fun, and even though it's not date, why really, she's paid for everything since. Then it evolved into buying me some nice things, nothing too personal like clothes, but she's gotten me some nice bottles of wine, scotch, a candle she liked, yeah, no, nice gift type things. Well, this week these gifts just went a step further. She's going to Barbados in February, and after jokingly saying I'd love to go, she booked me a ticket because, well, she says she felt like it. I'm also an avid surfer, so she wants me to surf all morning while she sleeps and then basically bang her on different parts of the island. I'm dropping $0. She's adamant about not having a relationship outside of a casual one though. For numerous reasons it isn't for her, and having spent enough time with her I think she's genuine and I believe her. She definitely likes to spend money on me, but not in frivolous ways like more clear-cut sugar mamas. Still, I think the situation fits well enough to comment about. Who knows, maybe she'll start funding my business. TLDR, 26-year-old me met 41-year-old her at the gym, and after casual and consistent hooking up, she starts buying me dinner, nice gift gestures, and now a 5-day trip to Barbados in February. The fact that you don't want anything from her is probably incredibly refreshing. I can see that lasting for a long time if you keep it light-hearted and grateful and give her a good time. Shit man, Barbados. You must eat pussy like a parched cocker spaniel. Not gonna lie, this is either genuinely a nice thing you have going or a human trafficking project. Oh wow. OP gets shipped off to Barbados where he is used as a sex slave by visiting sex-hungry MILFs. That sounds awful. I'm gonna be honest, from what you've described, you just might be hooking up with my friend's mom. Be careful. Don't get trapped and communicate your wishes as well. If you start realizing you're doing things you don't want to do, tell her and break it off. He got expensive gifts all the time, was always going to fancy restaurants, and she let him drive her luxury sedan around whenever he wanted. Plus he got to stay at her swanky apartment rent-free. Cons. I don't think there were any for him. He came and went as he pleased. She wasn't particularly controlling. If anything, she was very sweet, and she was very attractive. If I could get a deal like that, I'd be foolish not to jump on it. Edit, should add why they broke up. He crashed her Mercedes, she stopped letting him drive her car, and he cheated on her. It was a messy breakup and my friend is an asshole. I went to a bar one time and this cougar kept ordering pitchers of beer for me. One thing led to another and I went home to her place. Woke up the following morning to find out she was an E7 and I was a RE4. Fast forward to later in the relationship, she told me that she wanted to get engaged before she left for her next duty station. I agreed, so we went to a jewelry store. She picked out a ring and asked me if I wanted an engagement present too. I picked out a fancy watch and she paid for everything. 2 days later she changed her mind about the engagement and decided she wanted to be single. At least I got to keep the watch. This is a story I got secondhand but it fits the theme. We were lying in bed talking about our pasts and he told me about a job he'd had just after graduating from high school working at a corner store the summer before he went to college. The owner had a car accident and became partially disabled. The owner asked if he would like to earn some extra money working around his house while he recovered. He said things went well for about a month until one day, the store owner was gone and his wife came out to the garage in an open bathrobe. At first he just kind of blushed and turned away, but after a week or so of her turning up half naked in different spots around the house, he took her up on the offer. He said the owner suddenly doubled his salary at the store but he only had to go there once a week and the rest of the time he was to report to the house where his salary also doubled and they bought him a new used car. He said except for his one day at the store, he never did any work except sexing the wife and suddenly he also had enough to cover his tuition. He went to local college and kept that job for 2 years. The owner, with rehab, moved from a wheelchair to crutches to a cane and one day called the young man's side and told him they were selling the house and the store and moving to Florida. He told me the old man also said, "I want you to know you saved my marriage. You think I didn't know you were sleeping with her this whole time? It was my idea. I love my wife and I'd do anything for her but that accident changed things for us. You're young and just wanted some pussy and a car and a few extra dollars for school and some money in your pocket. An older man would have come in here and had the house and the store and my wife too. We're moving on but you don't have to worry about tuition. Just keep on with school, young man." He said his tuition stayed paid until he graduated but he never saw the old man or his wife again. Met her when I was 22. She worked 2 shifts a week at work, and suggested going to a movie. I was flattered and jumped at the chance. Afterwards we went to her apartment and had the most awesome sex of my young life. Next day, more of the same. Within a week, she suggested I move some of my stuff in. No need to pay rent. Her mom and dad took care of that. And the car payments. And credit card bills. Eventually I found out her family owned thousands of acres of farmland, 3 radio stations, and a television station. After a few weeks, the sex got less and less, and she began spending more time out with her girlfriends. Guys would come by too, guys wearing colors and riding Harleys. Slowly the truth started coming out. She was gay, the women were her rich girlfriends and drug clients, the bikers were her drug dealers. She needed a man to live with her to keep her rich, extremely conservative family from guessing that she liked women and cutting her off from her money. Feeling like I'd been lied to and gaslighted, I moved out after a month and ghosted her. Honestly, while I see where her actions would leave a bad taste in your mouth, Jiggity, I would honestly have stayed, even knowing that she didn't really care about me sexually. Never having to pay bills would be awesome, if only for a little while, and you could have an actual relationship on the side. It's not like the girl whose house you're staying at would care. Signed into my alt just to comment on this. I'm currently in an FWB type thing with an older woman. I'm 23, she's 37, with some sugar mama elements to it, mostly that she buys me nice dinners and drinks and I give her a good time in bed playing a Switch. We met on Bumble. She says she wasn't originally looking at guys my age, but her friend messed with the age thing without telling her and she matched with me. She's a professor researcher and I'm a grad student, not her student, but in a similar field at the same university, so we have a lot in common. She didn't actually realize I was that much younger until we'd already been texting for a while and had a date planned, but she went through with it anyway and the sexual tension was there from the start. I was pretty nervous the first time, but she has some dominant tendencies, especially in bed, so I think she found it cute. We fucked 4 times that night and haven't slowed down much since. We aren't exclusive or anything. She goes out with other guys her age and I go out with other girls my age. She actually encourages it. She even likes hearing me talk about whenever I get laid with a younger girl. It's kind of a crazy whirlwind thing, especially since I was a virgin less than a year ago, but it's fun. Would highly recommend. Although I feel like if I ever get famous or run for office or anything, it's going to get found out somehow and scandalize my entire extended family to death. Edit. To clarify, I mean playing a Switch in the Dom sub-sense, not in the sense of playing on the Nintendo system. Oh no. The edit ruined the fantasy for me. My edit, thanking you very much for silvering me. Well, I was 22 at the time. I met this gal on the interwebs, of course. We planned to meet after talking for a few weeks. She was 30. She drove out to me the first time we met. She brought food and a movie. I didn't know anything about her. We kept seeing each other. She would constantly come out to see me, but never ask me to drive to her. I didn't think anything of it. She would always get me gifts, food, tickets for sports to go with her. You name it. I couldn't match her cause I was tight on money, had a simple job and was in the National Guard too. I did feel bad not being able to get her stuff or travel to her. I even told her that. She would smile and tell me I don't care about that. I care about seeing you. After she said that, we ended up having sex. And let me tell ya, it was the best sex I've ever had. I got worried that might have ruined it between us. She didn't contact me for a week. I felt sad cause we had probably the best connection ever. She did text me apologizing for the disconnect in communication. Her job took her away from her means of communicating. I personally didn't care. I was glad she showed back up lol. I finally asked her what she did for a living. Turns out she was the CEO of some multi-million business firm. When I heard that, my heart skipped a beat and all I can ask, why me? Lol, I of course did not ask that. But for 3-ish years we were basically FWBs. Every time we saw each other, she would bring me food and we would have sex. One day, she invited me camping. I met her entire family. Nicest people I've ever met. They all knew about me. They didn't judge anything whatsoever. You knew her family was rich just by looking at them. Glorious camping experience ever. Her family bought me a brand new vehicle. They bought me a house. They even got me a very high paying job. It just couldn't get any better. But it did. This woman confessed her love for me. I was already in love with her as well. We made it official and we have been together for 9 months now with a kid on the way. An ex-geisha that owned a whisker place wanted to give me a job. The old guys I was drinking with told me that if I accept she will give me a lot of presents and money. So I will look pretty behind the bar and basically pour drinks and talk to people and sleep with her. She was probably 80. She called me almost daily after I told her I would think it over. I was looking for a job at the time. I got a lame ass but pays well teaching job instead. She got angry on the phone and hung up. I met a girl at a club in Ibiza, we're both Americans, and ended up spending the night with her. We didn't even actually fuck BC, neither of us had optimal spaces to go back to for the night, but lots of heavy petting, as my mom would say, and stayed up to watch the sunrise on the beach. She revealed to me later that she was in her mid-30s, did not look it, I was only 21. In the morning I realized I had lost my phone, which had my debit card in it as well. She helped me call my bank in America and cancel my card, and insisted I stay with her at a nice ass hotel for the day and enjoy the pool, buying me drinks all day and even letting me borrow a swimsuit. Did I mention that I'm also female? Lol, surprise lesbians. She eventually gave me €50 to get back to my more than enough, and offered to fly me out to where she's from if I was ever up for it. She then asked for my address back home and ended up sending me a $150 Visa gift card to replace my lost phone. We didn't keep in touch, but more than a year later I still wonder if she would still fly me out if I hit her up. Yoga studio owner. My yoga instructor had me quit my job, move in with her, and go to all her classes for almost 2 years. Sex and intimacy was great throughout. She spoiled me, traveling, shopping, concerts, gifts, and paid for everything, but my self-esteem suffered greatly. We broke up when depression hit me hard. Was kinda fun being on 2-year vacation, but hard to explain the gap on my resume. Edit, added details, and spelling. Not sure how the definition of sugar mama changes based on age. And this is an absolutely true story. When I was in Thailand I met an absolute stunner in an island bar. She had 2 kids but was in her early 20s and divorced. She was slender, had large fake breasts, and stunning model features. Her English was the level of my 4-year-old brother though. I was a little older. She had drunk a lot that night and was being sick. I chilled with her and her friends in this bar and made sure she was alright. It was coming to the end of the night anyway and I just wanted a beer by the beautiful beach. Fast forward a few days, after having her friends validate me for niceness that night, and not trying to hit on her, she starts messaging me a lot about wanting to meet in Bangkok. I didn't meet her kids or go to her main place. She had a nanny. She didn't want me to go to her main house because people knew her, and her relatives and ex-husband would question the safety of her kids. So instead she would book the best restaurants and 5-star hotels for us to eat and stay in around Thailand and Asia. She paid for everything. One of my best days was being in this incredible restaurant munching on a seafood platter, foie gras and a good bottle of wine, while staring across the table into her gorgeous eyes. She later led me up to the private pool where she proceeded to give me an underwater blowjob. She was voracious for sex and I was willing to give it anywhere, any place at any time. She deserved it. Was a life-changing experience. After leaving Thailand she started getting into drugs and dating other model-type guys. The video calls become more and more strained as her English didn't improve. Last time I saw her she was with a very handsome, much taller model than myself. I wish her all the best and it ultimately would not have worked out because of the language barrier. Still a great chunk of life. Currently the provider in a sugar mama-ish relationship. It didn't start out that way, but it just kind of happened. Met a guy when I was in college. I graduated before him and landed a killer job, doubly good pay and benefits. He's still a starving college student with no expendable income, and will be in school for way longer because he's getting a master's as well. It's really nice to be able to take him out for dinner and buy him nice things that he needs but can't afford, new shoes when the other ones were falling apart, a bed frame so he doesn't have his mattress on the floor, a big desk so he has an actual workspace instead of using the kitchen table or the floor. Every now and then I take him out on cool random adventures, Six Flags, cat cafe, concerts, restaurants, etc. Honestly, it's also kinda satisfying on an ego level. Like, it makes me feel like a cool breadwinning adult who has all her shit together. Still though, the nicest part is being able to make his life easier and more enjoyable, and being able to let him know that he always has a safety net so he won't be so stressed all the time. Had a huge crush on my friend's hippie mom 4 years when I was a teen. She knew. Some things you can't just hide all the time. Berners Dart. Went to their house one day after work, but my friend wasn't home. Ended up secretly hooking up with his mom for a few months. It wasn't a financial sugar mama, but all the sex and pot a teenager could hope for. I posted the story a while back. NSFW, what's the most awkward boner you've ever had? askReddit webpage. Was 19, almost 20 at the time. Seen this MILF that moved into the house next door. My best friend came over and we were outside smoking some bud. We seen her walk into the house from work and I told him, man, I would bang her. Hour later she came out of the house and started talking to us by the fence. We're all talking and having a good time. Then all of a sudden my buddy says, cold shoulda told me something about you. If looks could kill, I would have murdered him. She looked over at me and said, oh really? What did you say about me? I thought about it for a second and decided to just say fuck it and see what happens. I told her I wanted to bang her. Later that night all three of us were drinking. My buddy got too drunk and passed out in our garden. Come to find that out the next morning. She told me to come into her house and we fucked. That's the start of how I ended up dating a MILF for nearly 5 years. I'm so late to this, so it will likely be buried, but this happened to a friend of mine, and X200B. He visits Dubai, uses Tinder. He's a good looking guy. 3 weeks later, he gets a match with some English lady who lives in Dubai. He's 28, she's 38. They talk, they get on. He mentions in passing that he's a teacher and jokes about only having one pair of jeans. A few days later, 2 new pairs of jeans turn up at his house. She sends him presents all the time, offers to pay for concerts, sends him money, all without him asking. Eventually, she asks him to visit her in Dubai. She says she'll pay for everything. Flights, accommodation, food, even holiday spending money. Everyone says don't go. We think he's going to get kidnapped or something. He goes. 1 week later he returns. Apparently she's an interior designer, and makes crazy money. She's paid for Michelin star meals, 5-star hotels, fun activities like driving around in dune buggies. This whole situation is stressing all of us out. What's the catch? It's so confusing. None of this makes sense. Why would she pay for all of this? Why does she want to date this random guy from Stoke so badly? Why is she willing to spend this money on someone she has never met? So we say, man, you have to show us a picture of her. He does. 10 stone cold fox. That's just it. There's no punchline to this story. Confusion doesn't abate. She wasn't ugly, or a dude, or a scammer, or anything. I still don't understand. He's going back to see her again at Easter. And X200B, and X200B, and X200B, and X200B. I was homeless when I was 18, and I hit up a dating site and found a deaf chick 10 years older than me, and she became very infatuated with me. I got a place to live, food, money, and Pokemon games from her. I cut her off physically when I got a girlfriend later in the year, but she still kept paying for my stuff. I feel genuinely awful about how much I took advantage of the situation. Edit. Death not dead, holy fuck. Back in my broke college days, a girl that liked me was a manager at McDonald's. It started out with me getting a discount and eventually turned into her bringing me free food every night when she got off work. At the same time, my current wife was a cashier at Walmart. I would go through her line and she would only scan a few of my cheaper items. I would get $200 worth of stuff for like $40. The next year she paid for a trip to Vegas together. We've been together for 23 years now. My current wife was a cashier at Walmart. The next year she paid for a trip to Vegas, HMM. I'll just say in my life I've gotten way more guys hot, smart, successful, 25 early 30-year-old guys as a 32-36-year single mom, with my own place in the suburbs who can't count on her hands how many times a year she goes out than I did as a 26-year living in the city going out 5 nights a week. Guys like staying in, they like home cooked meals, watching TV, cuddling, and they also like doing family shit, like apple picking. Go figure. Just dating me gives them the best of both worlds. They get to feel like a husband and a father, but without any of the real responsibility or commitment, and that makes them want those things. Believe me, I'm the one who usually breaks it off. TLDR at the bottom. It's a long one, but the craziest thing to have ever happened to me. I'm in my early 20s in college currently. I'm from the West Coast and was in Washington DC working an internship this past summer. The organization I worked for had branches in New York and DC, and so a few times over the summer they sent me to the New York office occasionally. I would just take a train in the morning and returning in the evening. On my very first trip back from New York, I'm on the evening train back to DC. The train made a few stops to drop and pick up some people, one of these places being Philadelphia. I'm passed out on the train and eventually wake up about 10 minutes after we have left Philadelphia to find a blonde woman sitting next to me. She's super beautiful, but at that point I wasn't even thinking about anything sexual. I start to casually chat her up and we immediately hit it off, talking basically the whole way back to DC, about 2 hours if I recall correctly. At one point in the conversation, I ask her how old she thinks I look. It's probably important to note that I look significantly older than I actually am given how I have a full beard. She also looked younger than she actually turned out to be. She guesses incorrectly that I'm in my 30s and I laugh and tell her my real age. To which she responds that she feels bad because, as it turns out, she is 40. I did find out that she was single during the conversation and was never married, so I decided to just say fuck it and ask for her number. She gives it to me and I text her about a week later to go out. She agrees, we go out and get dinner and some coffee, fairly casual stuff, but she is still an absolute pleasure to talk to. At the end, we go to the metro and I ask her what she envisioned this being, to which she responded that we would probably just be friends and that even though she thought I was cute it was just weird for her given the age. It is also interesting to note that she said that when she was my age she was dating men that were older and were in their 40s, which I think ended up influencing how things went afterwards. I respond that I thought it would be possibly intimate and she said she'd think about it. That same night, about an hour after I'd gotten home, she invites me over to her place that upcoming Friday. I agree, we get some takeout to her place, and just end up talking and hanging out until about 1 AM, at which point I didn't see it going anywhere so I decided to leave. She then texted me the next morning saying how she wanted for me to spend the night, but also joked about how she needed a glass of wine or two to maybe make that happen. I respond by saying that it sounds like we have our plans set for next week, which she enthusiastically agrees to. Fast forward to the next Friday and we are drinking wine, laughing, and watching Spaceballs. We end up killing a bottle of wine between the two of us, which makes us both relatively drunk. As soon as the movie ends, the next thing I know she is on top of me sloppily making out with me and unbuttoning my shirt. We end up having sex that night, and that ended up setting the tone for the rest of my summer, about the next month and a half. I count that I went to her place a total of 15 more times after that, each time I spent the night there. We would usually go out and she would insist on paying for everything each time, be it Ubers, drinks, meals, etc. I offered to pay most times, but she would always reject my offers and insist that she pay. She even paid for steak dinners and $60 bottles of wine and even would tell me to stop offering to pay and that she would take care of everything. We kept in touch a bit once the summer ended, but not too much, just texts on and off every now and then. My birthday was last month and she sent me a gold chain and pendant with a custom inscription from the jewelry shop that she works at. Certainly one of the craziest things to ever happen in my life. TLDR, met a woman about twice my age on a train, got her number, started hooking up with her. She paid for everything whenever we went out and she sent me gold jewelry on my birthday. In college at age 22, met a 44-year-old woman at work. She was a receptionist, something to do with her time because she was tired of sitting around at home. She certainly didn't need the money. I was a technician at the same company. One day, overhear her talking about her and her husband's sex life with some of the other receptionists. She's not content. I tell her she just needs to find a man who knows how to go down on her, and that I've purposely tried to get really good at that because I plan on using it to keep my wife happy whenever I end up finding the one. Bold statement on my part, I think. But hey, It was a temporary position for me and I didn't really care what she thought of me. She ends up doubting I know my stuff due to my age and I repeatedly insist I'm not bad at it. That piqued her interest, I guess, because she decided to test me out to see if I really did know my stuff. I had loose morals and didn't even consider the repercussions of sleeping with a married woman. Also, kinda figured if she was that open to the idea of it, she'd probably already cheated before and I wasn't the first. After the first time we hook up, she insists it was good enough that she'd pay for it on a regular basis. I mention that's not necessary, but then she drops a bomb noting that one of her close relatives is the VP for a very large car company in America. After hearing that, I coyly suggest I wouldn't mind getting paid for the hell of it. And that's where it took off. Over the next few months we hooked up on and off. I gained a nice watch, a very nice suit, a 50 inches flat screen, PS4, a sweet lifted 99 Jeep Cherokee, that ended up catching on fire a few weeks later unfortunately, a couple months rent, and a semester of tuition, which after my scholarships was only $1,500, but it got me through my undergrad, Dart. Not to mention the countless bottles of Eagle Rare Knob Creek whiskey and ice dinners that went along with it. All in all, I ended up spending most of my senior year with her, and not my friends. So to that extent it was unpleasant. She was somewhat demanding and I felt like I did miss out on a lot of cool things. However, she did me an enormous favor because I likely wouldn't have been able to afford my last semester without her. She got me through college, and in return I showed her how someone should actually be treating her. Also, lots of sex, to the point where I was exhausted pretty much all the time. But, after recognizing the abusive toxic patterns in her marriage, she divorced him, and she seems to be much happier. We still talk on occasion, but live rather far from each other, so I never see her anymore. It was the ride of a lifetime and I actually don't think I would do anything different. TLDR, I made a best friend of twice my age when I was just trying to selfishly get laid. She ended up having a very rich family. We both profited immensely, me in a financial way, her in an emotional way. Edit, formatting. That piqued her interest. The word is actually piqued. I'm not a grammar Nazi but I've found it beneficial when people have corrected me on stuff like that. Met a lady online who said that she was moving to my home city and didn't know anyone there. Asked if we could go on a date when she next came up to see the house. I said yes and we arranged to go to local pub for a drink. It was way obvious within seconds of meeting her that she was very wealthy and a bit older than I figured. I was early 20s and she must have been mid-late 30s. I insisted on moving the date to an upscale restaurant in the same neighborhood and she praised me for my astuteness and said that she owned her own legal practice employing dozens of solicitors and made a significant amount of money, and actually felt really out of place around people even though she had quite humble beginnings herself. She was terrified that she had become snobby and withdrawn and was delighted when I dragged her out into the city for a sensational night out drinking and dancing. A few weeks later she said that she was coming back to the city to finalize the big move and asked if I would meet her in the city on the Saturday morning. We went shopping and she dropped some serious money on me, buying me a few suits, some jewelry, sunglasses, aftershave and more pairs of shoes than I have ever owned in my life. She just yanked stuff off the shelf and hurled it at the shop attendants and, whilst I was a little embarrassed to begin with, she reassured me that she was flush and just wanted to spoil me a bit in return for making her feel so good. We piled all the bags and boxes into a cab and went back to her place. I live in a small city, so you know where the most expensive houses are. Well, we went past those. Further out the cab pulled into a driveway that was maybe half a kilometer long and had a sort of converted barn complex at the end of it. Place was large enough to be easily 5 houses. She paid the taxi and we went indoors. Place was seriously kitted out with all manner of interesting and exotic world art and decorations. Loads of pictures of her traveling and meeting people and smiling all over the world. She had a bar in her living room. She poured us both some primo drinks and asked if I wanted to see the bedroom. Feeling frisky, I agreed and she led me through to a palatial bedroom, high ceilings, beams and a huge 4-poster bed. She lay on the bed and threw a hand up to rest on her brow so she sort of looked like an old movie star. She asked me to kiss her, so I put my drink down, climbed onto the bed with her and did so. Slipping her dress over her shoulder, she asked me to kiss her neck and I did so. Then she said something strange. She asked me to kiss her like she was dead. I sat up, a little confused, and she hurried to clarify and said to kiss her like she was Sleeping Beauty and that I was waking her from the dead with my kiss. So I did my best impression of a fairy tale prince and we went from there. She was a very passive lover, so passive that it crossed my mind that she might be very inexperienced perhaps. After a while she was so unresponsive it started to make me feel like I was doing something wrong and I asked if there was anything I could do for her. She leaned across the bed and took a massive belt off her drink and seemed somewhat reluctant to ask, so I took my turn to reassure her. I wanted to make her happy. I wanted to be with her in that moment. She got up and padded across the room to a screen facing the bed and pulled it back to reveal a giant chest freezer. The sort that you have in the garage for your deep freeze. Opening it, she turned to me and confessed that she could only ever get aroused if she felt like she was a corpse and she needed to get into the freezer to make her skin cold. Then she would like it very much if I would lift her from the freezer, carry her to the bed and make love to her. She wanted me to bring her back from the dead. My now husband has a thing for older women. I'm 7 years his senior, which is no biggie. According to him, he would hook up with friends' mothers more often than not. When he was in trucking school, he was hooking up with a woman at least 20 years older than him. She was also attending the same school. He's a gym rat and I guess this woman was as well. She was into steroids even. Apparently her clit looked like a small penis. My man is a freak and shameless. BTW. Anyways, one night during sex her son had decided to stop by. From what I was told they were about the same age. My man stayed back as she went out to talk to him. Her son was making something to eat. Then, he casually walked into the living and sat on the couch while saying what up to son. The son and her mother also came and sat in the living room to watch a movie or something. The son looked and his mom and then my husband put his food down and left. I found it comical. Not exactly a sugar mama, but she let him stay at her house while they were in school together because he lived so far away. A friend of mine told me this story where an Asian woman he was seeing casually all of a sudden flew him out to whatever country she was from in the Far East. Her house was lavish. Armed guards and everything. He was about 20 and she was around the same age. He said they couldn't really speak each other's languages well. He's Mexican and American. But after sex she would make him take a shower immediately. He convinced her that he would need to see his family in person to say goodbye and stay with her. I think she made it clear she wasn't letting him go, so she bought him a ticket back to the States. He never contacted her again and stayed here. He said it was the weirdest thing he's ever experienced in a sexual relationship. He's married with a few kids now back in his hometown. Preface: I'm a woman. So, I'm mainly into women. I'm just not generally attracted to men. I was on a sugar dating site and a couple messaged me. The woman was also older but she was surprisingly hot. I picked a nice place for dinner and everything seemed to be going well. Then, towards the end, the guy blew up at me. He didn't believe I wasn't having sex with my male cuddle buddy. Asked me about intimate relationships earlier in the night. Said it was no wonder no man wanted to be in a relationship with me. I was too controlling. Because when he asked intimate questions I replied that there was one odd specific thing I didn't really enjoy, but otherwise I'm fairly easy to get off compared to most women. He was so insistent and cruel and attacking that he made me cry right there in the restaurant. The woman was defending me and trying to get him to calm down. Eventually he did and then motioned for the check. Side note, I was on a cane during this part of my life and when going on a sugar date or any date I would sometimes try to go without my cane to leave a better impression. I had some bad experiences. He pays the check and I'm like drying my eyes on my napkin and trying to put on the best face I can. They ask if I want a ride and my foot leg was hurting so bad. I didn't have a car then. I didn't want to hurt my pride further by limping down the street in front of them. I could fake walking like a healthy person for a little bit, but not much. So I made a really dumb decision and said yes. We get in the car and he is driving. She leans over and brushes my breast. I think it's an accident and then she just leans over and goes for a kiss. And he couldn't be involved because he was in the front seat. It was like getting instant karma. She knew what she was doing. She played with my nipples through my dress, something that always drives me wild. I love the feeling of being stimulated through soft fabrics. Then she lowered down the straps and played with my nipples with her lips, teeth, and tongue. The man was probably watching in the rearview mirror, but that was a small price to pay. I played with her breasts through her shirt, all the while kissing, and it was amazing. Probably could have done more with her, but it was a short ride and I only wanted to do so much in the back of a van. TLDR, Sugar Dad a 2/10 experience, Sugar Mama 8/10 experience.